Hey, you are in the right place. Welcome to the Ridley Speaks podcast. Thank you to my returning listeners. I appreciate you for coming back. I also appreciate your support. And to any new listeners, thank you for giving me a chance to speak and communicate with you on this platform. Hey, the Ridley Speaks podcast is available on Podbean, Google Chrome, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify. Also find the Ridley Speaks podcast on YouTube. Check me out on Instagram. The handle there is @RidleySpeaks. What is your role as a leader? Think about that. I want to continue the conversation about positivity. And I want to bring this topic of positivity from a leadership perspective. So let's get to it. Welcome back to Ridley Speaks. I am your host, of course, Carlos Ridley. There's a lot of conversations going on about leadership, right? We hear leadership a lot. Specifically, there's a lot of leadership conversations coming from the political cycle we are in, which gets heavy into emotions on both sides of the fence. But there's also this ideal of leadership in our normal lives and at work. So for the sake of this conversation, for you that are listening, raise your hands if you consider yourself a leader. If you are a leader in general, a leader within your family, work, you lead a team, divisions, whatever. I'm talking directly to you. I'm also talking to you that didn't virtually raise your hands and you didn't say you were a leader, but something is, kind of pulling you to call to lead. There's a calling for maybe you to lead. Are you a positive leader? Think about that for a second. Let that sink in and don't answer it quickly, but just soak in that. Are you a positive leader? Are you a leader that immerses positivity to the people or groups you lead? Or are you the opposite? Do you bring into your groups or community negativity? Now, if you're honest with yourself and you really think about it, you might say, yeah, but you have to be willing to acknowledge that. And this is where I want to focus on. This is really where I want to focus on. Now, leaders come in a variety of different ways. There are several forms, styles of leadership. And some of those examples, are authoritative, servant-led. One of my favorite, transformational, laissez-faire, autocratic. And that's just to name a few, just in terms of styles. But I don't want to focus on the styles. More, I want to focus on how positive you are in leading. And we know that leading is hard. Leaders have to make hard decisions that can or could affect the people and communities around them. As a leader, you cannot please everyone. And I think that's a key thing, that we as human beings always try to please everyone, but you can't please everyone. So knowing that as a leader, you can't please everyone. And when you try, you alienate somebody. That's a guarantee. If you try to please everyone, there's somebody that's going to feel alienated. And that's where a lot of challenges brew. Effective leaders are neutral in their mindset, right? Meaning they may have a side, right? But the people around them may not know what that side is. And the easiest thing to do is to use politics as an example. Now, you can use politics, religion, you can use a wide variety of things. But politics usually puts people in certain places that they probably are not comfortable with. And we can use this political cycle, elections over, as an example in leadership. And I really want to focus in on leadership as it relates to leaders in the workplace. And in this climate that we're in today, I feel like it's really hard for leaders to be neutral in a sort of, because I believe that they're being pushed in a certain way. If you think differently than someone else, you are easily labeled and or targeted. But if you're a true leader, that shouldn't bother you or faze you, in my opinion. I believe that you, going back to being neutral in your mindset, it is just as important to ensure that the people or the communities that you lead, that you have a very level mindset on the actual people. Because it's usually a diverse group of people. You're usually not leading people that all think the same or that think like you, right? And you have to be aware of, and I use this analogy a lot, of how people like their coffee. Because some people like it black, some people like it with cream and sugar, right? And the quicker you know that, the quicker you can at least provide them what they want or want to hear or want to see. So when we talk about the political landscape and how it affects leaderships from a positivity standpoint, look, everything in the news, which drives the news or media, is based on emotions, negativity, because it gets people riled up. That spills over into the workplace. So not getting deep into kind of the politics, but let's just use some examples. We are heavy into this cycle of politics where if you are a certain way or quote unquote vote a certain way, you could be labeled a few things. You could be labeled a racist. You could have things labeled like white supremacy. You could have things even as those quote unquote liberals, which brings up a different connotation, right? But how do you effectively deal with that in the workplace, and how are you positive? So if you're in a work environment and you have people that are very pro on the boat of, if someone doesn't believe in me, then they are a white supremacist or a racist, and you have a diverse work group, meaning you have black employees, white employees, Asian employees, Hispanic employees, or a mixture of all, right? Or heavy on one group and lighter on another group. When that spills over into the workplace or the team, right? And that starts to become a challenge where people are looking at each other funny, but then they are looking at you to say, well, what are you going to do about it? You have to be careful, because what happens is, as soon as you bring or allow kind of the political emotions into the workplace, it breeds negativity. And how you deal with it, how you respond to it, is very important. So I go back to saying your mindset should be neutral. Should be neutral. You might agree with one set of politics over the other, right? But you can't let that rule in the way that you lead, right? So if there is any disagreement in politics, but it spills over into the workplace, there is a sense of, how do I as a leader transform any negative input into this group and make it positive? Because without that, you're always going to have this tension, this reverberation back, where the synergy and the energy in the group just will not be effective. Okay. And it's up to you to make it that way, because that's what you are paid to do. Now, there are a lot of people that are in leadership positions that are not leaders. They are managers at the very least. And we've seen this a lot. I've seen it a lot in my lifetime. I know you've probably seen it, where person A is put into a position and everybody knows that they're not a leader, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. but it affects the entire operation because with them not being a leader, no one's really taking them seriously. So no one's really putting in the total effort because they don't know how to be neutral in their mindset. So when we talk about positivity, I want to roll back to this whole notion of positivity as a leader. It is just as important to ensure that the negative doesn't roll into the group as it is ensuring that everyone has a voice as it pertains and respectful to differences. And I'm using politics as an example, but it really can be a lot of different things that causes negativity to seep into your groups. Now, there's one thing for letting different things, I'm talking politics, kind of seep into the work group. If you don't address it, that is also a negative situation. If you're just hoping that, whatever has seeped in will just kind of go away and you don't address it, that is not breathing positivity into your groups. That is not effective leadership. So let's make an example. Person comes in and they're talking to another employee and they're, mentioning how, or they're having a conversation about, this is quote unquote white supremacy. And I'm just using this because these are kind of the hot topics and just bear with me and follow me. Okay. Another employee hears it that doesn't necessarily agree with that. Right. And maybe they're in the conversation or they get dragged into the conversations just because it's out in the open. Right. Now you have a group of people that are looking at this other employee sideways because they don't necessarily agree with what they're saying. And now there's this tension or there's this assumptions that, well, because they disagree with us, that now makes them X, Y, and Z. And now I'm going to label them X, Y, and Z. And now the other employee is like, I am not like that. I just don't agree with you. And now you have this turmoil in your unit, your group, your team, your division. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? Are you under pressure to side with one group versus the other just because of the landscape that we're in? Or do you say, strip out the quote unquote political sides, left or right, and how do you actually deal with that particular incident? Are you powerful when you're dealing with it? Are you folding under pressure? Are you being lazy and just going with the status quo? Or are you not necessarily defending? Are you powerful for both sides of the conversation? Because if you're not powerful for both sides of the conversation, you're not being an effective leader and you're not immersing positivity in this group, in this particular example situation. And so we have to, as leaders, understand that there are going to be challenges that are just going to be thrown at us, whether we want to or not. But how we address them is the most important thing. How we engage with unpopular decisions, unpopular topics is very key. Are you positive in dealing with that? Are you immersing positivity into the conversation or the situation? How do you deal with someone who has this kind of energy that may lead you to believe that they have some bigotry in them based off of things you've heard, based off of things people said, or based off of a conversation that has been brought to your attention? Just as neutral and fairly, you have to deal with that side of it as well. How do you deal with it? What type of positive actions are you putting into place in that negative action? See, a lot of times we as leaders want to just like close our eyes and hope that it all works itself out. And that's not the case. Thus, that's why you're have been placed in the position of leadership that you are in. And it is very apparent that some people, even though they want to lead, aren't ready to do what's necessary. And if you've heard any of these podcasts in the past, when you speak your voice, there is the possibility of backlash. You also have to understand as a leader, again, you cannot please everyone. You can do your best, but someone is going to feel like you're not on their side or that you're leaving them out. And it's up to you to build enough equity, positive equity in your group where people do not feel like that. And it's not always easy. And in this climate that we're in this country, it's even harder. So when I look at leadership as an overall, and when I look at it from a positivity standpoint, one, I want to make sure that everyone knows that I'm on their side, regardless of their political affiliations, religious affiliations, whatever it is. Okay. Number two, I want people to know and understand that as a team, we're going to think differently. We've been brought up differently. Our skill sets could be different, but that's fine. And it's okay. We have to work to the strengths. The other thing is I want to make sure people are heard, right? Regardless of what it is. If someone is really upset or feel that there is some injustice going on within a group, right, about decisions within the workplace, I want to make sure that I listen to what that is. I want to make sure that the person or the people or group that have that mindset that are coming to me with information understand or feel like that I have actually listened to them. And then ultimately, people want conclusion. They want to know what's the next step and what will happen or what is happening. But if you're going to do that for one group, then you have to do it for the other. And then whatever comes out of that, you have to be okay with any backlash, because now you have to, if there is any backlash, you have to come back and figure that portion out. Now I've gone through the steps, and now here's the second phase of that. Your role as a leader is to make everyone happy. Knowing that that might not be the case, but your role is to try to ensure that everyone is happy, or at least at the very minimum, that everyone is satisfied with the decision. So do you bring positivity as leader to the people or groups that you work with, you manage? Do people know that you have a side one way or the other? Is that side one way or the other prominent in your leading style? Do you cater to one group versus another? Is that visible to both groups? Are you viewed as someone that has or brings positivity? Or, based on your leadership style, does your leadership look and is perceived negative? And just for the record, I'm not talking about the person who's chipper at 5 a.m. and is leading, is ready to lead and ready to get things started and everything is perfect in the world, because we know that's not, right? I'm not talking about those chippers. But when you're there in the trenches of, and we're using an example of work as leadership, Are you checking yourself? Really? Are you looking in the mirror saying, hey, am I being an effective leader? Am I positive? Because positive breeds success. Positivity helps relieve the stress in the workplace. Positivity has team members, employees come to work in a better mood if they know that the energy is always going to be positive. So ask yourselves these questions. 1, am I a leader? Do I consider myself a leader? Secondly, do I bring in positivity as a leader? Do I immerse positivity into the group or the forum? And we really need to look at leadership overall. Because in today's climate, society, world, how many real leaders are there? Think about that. How many real leaders are there? Also think about this. Who do you feel is an effective leader? Meaning they have all the great leadership traits. They bring in positivity. When you think about them or you say their name, you automatically think positive things. Who is that for you? Think about that. And it might be more than one, but at least one person. Who is that for you? And I challenge you to really go through and look at everything that they have done, people they have been around, what others have said about them, and validate your choice. And when you validate your choice, is that someone you want to emulate? And if it is, do it. Leaders breed leaders. Don't walk away from it. And to you that didn't raise your virtual hand that says, yeah, I'm a leader. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to lead. If you hear that calling pulling you to be a leader, do it. Do it with power. Do it with passion. Do it with dedication. Do it with integrity. Because there are people looking for others to lead. Because not everybody is a leader, but there are people looking for others to lead. And if you're one of those people that are mulling, am I a leader or not? You know. You know if you're a leader or not. Look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself in the mirror, am I a leader? For some of you, it's going to be yes. For others, it's going to be no. And that's fine. For some of you that say no, that's pushing others to leadership. You're kind of the backbone because you see others that should be leaders, but they are afraid, so they stay in the crowd and they're followers. Now, there's too many leaders, and that becomes problematic at times. But overall, how positive are we as leaders? How positive are we in leading? Are we bringing in negative energy? Is that breeding to the groups that we claim that we lead? And if so, we're doing injustice to them. You owe your groups, your teams, your family members. You owe them positivity. That is the question for today. That is what I'm challenging you with moving forward. Are you a leader? Are you breeding positivity? If not, why? And then transform the mindset to bring in positivity. It's only going to help. It's only going to help. I've seen it too many times. So that is all the time I have today. I want to thank you for joining this podcast. I hope you have a great day. Thank you for listening to Ridley Speaks. And like a thief in the night, I am out.